You see gas bikes everywhere, electric bikes too, but diesel motorcycles? Practically non-existent. And there's a reason for that. One rooted in physics, history, and failure. Today, we're breaking down why diesel and motorcycles just don't mix, and why engineers have spent over 100 years trying anyway. You'll see bizarre prototypes, military experiments, and some truly awkward machines that should have worked, but didn't. And by the end, you'll understand not just why diesel bikes failed, but why a quiet comeback might still be possible. Brief history of diesel bikes. You might assume diesel motorcycles never existed, but the truth is, engineers have been trying and mostly failing to make them work for over a century. The first recorded diesel bike was a cobbled-together experiment in 1904, when Dutch inventor Jan Dopper mounted a tiny 2-horsepower bronze diesel engine onto a bicycle frame. It was slow, noisy, and barely functional, but it proved the concept was possible. By the 1920s and 30s, British tinkerers like Tony Sidney and Freeman Sanders took things further, modifying Norton motorcycles with diesel power plants. These early attempts were plagued by sluggish acceleration, excessive weight, and the infuriating habit of refusing to start in cold weather. Yet, they demonstrated that diesel bikes could run, just not well enough to compete with their gasoline-powered cousins. When World War II erupted, militaries had a golden opportunity to adopt diesel motorcycles. After all, diesel fuel was less volatile, more efficient, and often logistically simpler for armies running tanks and trucks on the same fuel. But the reality was far from ideal. While the US, Germany, and Britain relied heavily on gasoline-powered bikes like the Harley-Davidson WLA and BMW R75, diesel models remained rare. The few that existed, like the experimental German Köln, were too heavy for rapid deployment and too slow for battlefield agility. Diesel engines also suffered from excessive vibration, making them uncomfortable for long rides, hardly ideal for messengers or scouts. Even the military's love of rugged, reliable machinery couldn't overcome the diesel bike's fundamental flaws at the time. So why did these early diesel motorcycles fade into obscurity? The answer lies in a mix of engineering limitations and market disinterest. Diesel engines require heavy, reinforced components to handle their high compression ratios, which meant early diesel bikes were often 50 to 100 pounds heavier than their gasoline equivalents, a death sentence for performance. Meanwhile, gasoline engines were rapidly improving, becoming lighter, more powerful, and easier to start. By the post-war era, the few companies still experimenting with diesel bikes, like France's Diesel Journal, found little demand outside niche industrial or military applications. Without a major technological breakthrough or a fuel crisis forcing the issue, diesel motorcycles remained a curiosity rather than a mainstream option. It would take decades and a very different set of circumstances for them to make a quiet comeback. But that's a story for another time. Weight and size issues. Ever wondered why you rarely see diesel motorcycles cruising the streets? It's not just about fuel economy or torque. It's about physics, engineering, and the very soul of what makes a motorcycle fun to ride. The biggest roadblock is weight. Diesel engines are notoriously heavy. They have thicker blocks, reinforced internals, and higher compression ratios, all necessary for durability, but disastrous for a motorcycle's balance. Unlike cars and trucks, bikes can't hide extra pounds. Every ounce matters when you're riding on two wheels. Mount a diesel engine onto a motorcycle frame and you lose what makes riding special: nimbleness, responsiveness, and control. Handling takes a major hit. A diesel-powered bike would feel top-heavy, sluggish in corners, and exhausting to maneuver, especially at low speeds or during tight turns. Suspension, which is finely tuned for lighter gas engines, would struggle under the added weight, leading to a jarring, unstable ride. Then there's packaging. Motorcycles are compact marvels. There's no room to waste. A bulkier diesel engine would force painful design compromises, smaller fuel tanks, awkward ergonomics, and diminished ground clearance. The result? A bike that's more tractor than thrill machine. Even past attempts, like the military-grade Hayes diesel or the Neander, proved the point. They were tough, sure, but slow, clunky, and completely lacking in charm. Motorcycles are about freedom, precision, and emotion. Until diesel tech becomes lighter, smaller, and more refined, it simply doesn't belong on two wheels. That's why, for now, and likely forever, gasoline remains the undisputed king of the road. Vibration and ride comfort. Ever ridden a bike that felt more like a jackhammer? That's what diesel engines bring. Powerful, relentless vibration. While cars and trucks can absorb that shaking, motorcycles offer no such buffer. You're directly connected to the engine through the bars, seat, and pegs, meaning every shudder goes straight to your body. Diesel engines run on high compression and intense combustion, generating more torque, but also more chaos. Unlike smooth gasoline engines, diesels are built like tanks, heavy internals, loud operation, and rough power delivery. Even short rides can leave your hands buzzing and your back sore. Over long distances, that constant vibration leads to fatigue, numbness, and aches that kill the joy of riding. And then there's the noise. Diesel engines clatter and roar, and on a bike, without soundproofing, it's deafening. Combine that with vibration, and your relaxing cruise becomes a mechanical assault. Sure, some call it character, but for most riders, comfort matters. That's why even adventure and military bikes often avoid diesel. Because when your body is the suspension, every shake matters. Until diesel tech gets smoother and quieter, it simply can't match the ride quality gasoline engines offer, and that's a deal breaker for most bikers. Power delivery problems. Ever hopped on a motorcycle and felt that instant surge of power as you twist the throttle? Yeah, that's the magic of a high-revving gasoline engine, something diesel bikes just can't match. The problem? Diesel engines are torque monsters, but they're stuck in the slow lane when it comes to RPMs. While your average gasoline bike can scream past 10,000 RPM, most diesel engines tap out around 4,500–5,000 RPM, and that's a deal breaker for acceleration. Think about it. Motorcycles thrive on quick, responsive power delivery, especially when you need to dart through traffic or hit a tight corner. A diesel's low-revving nature means it builds power slowly like a freight train. Great for hauling heavy loads, but terrible for the snappy, adrenaline-pumping ride bikers crave. And it's not just about the numbers, it's how that power feels. Gasoline engines deliver smooth, linear acceleration thanks to spark ignition, while diesels rely on compression ignition, which creates a rougher, more unpredictable power band. That means instead of a crisp throttle response, you get a jerky, tractor-like lurch. Imagine trying to blip the throttle for a quick downshift, only to get a delayed, clunky reaction. Even high-performance diesel bikes, like the Neander Turbo Diesel with its 112 horsepower, struggle to match the razor-sharp responsiveness of gas-powered rivals. For riders, that lack of immediacy sucks the fun out of the ride, turning what should be an exhilarating experience into a sluggish slog. Then there's the weight penalty. Diesel engines are built to handle extreme compression forces, so they're heavier and bulkier than gas engines. Another strike against agility. More weight means slower acceleration, even if the torque figures look impressive on paper. Take the Royal Enfield Taurus. Its diesel engine made a pathetic 6.5 horsepower and topped out at 65 km/h, making it feel more like a glorified lawnmower than a real motorcycle. Even modern attempts like Axiom's diesel cruisers barely crack 24 horsepower from a 1.0-liter engine. Pathetic compared to gas bikes half their size. Bottom line, diesel's low RPM, high-weight combo is a recipe for underwhelming performance, and that's why you'll almost never see them on the road. Fuel efficiency myth? You'd think diesel motorcycles would be everywhere. After all, diesel engines are legendary for their fuel efficiency, right? But here's the twist. While diesel cars and trucks sip fuel compared to their gasoline counterparts, motorcycles already get insane mileage without the diesel hassle. Take a typical gas-powered Kawasaki KLR 650, which averages around 55 mpg. Pretty solid for a bike that can tackle highways and dirt trails. Now compare that to its diesel cousin, the military-spec HDT M1030 M1, which squeezes out a jaw-dropping 96 mpg. Sure, that's impressive, but ask yourself, does doubling your fuel economy really matter when you're already stopping less often than a Tesla charges? For most riders, the answer is no, especially when you factor in the diesel bike's slower acceleration, extra weight, and the fact that gas stations are way more common than diesel pumps in many places. The truth is, gasoline motorcycles strike a sweet spot between performance and efficiency that diesel struggles to match. Modern gas engines are lightweight, rev-happy, and cheap to maintain, qualities that matter way more to the average rider than hypermiling. Even long-distance tourers or adventure riders who'd theoretically benefit from diesel's range often prioritize agility and power over squeezing out every last mile from a tank. And let's be real, unless you're crossing deserts or serving in the military, where the HDT M1030 M1 shines because it runs on jet fuel, that extra efficiency just doesn't move the needle. Gas bikes like the Honda Rebel 500 or BMW R1250 GS already offer 60+ mpg with none of the diesel's vibrations, noise, or turbo lag, trade-offs most riders aren't willing to make. So, is diesel's efficiency a game changer for motorcycles? Not really. The niche cases where it makes sense, like military logistics or ultra-long-haul touring, are just too narrow to justify mass production. Meanwhile, electric bikes are now stealing the spotlight with instant torque and zero emissions, leaving diesel as a quirky footnote in motorcycle history. Sure, there are wild one-offs like the turbocharged Star Twin Thunderstar 1200 TDI or Axiom's diesel cruisers, but these are passion projects, not practical solutions. At the end of the day, gasoline bikes already do not practical solutions. At the end of the day, gasoline bikes already do what riders need. They're fast, fun, and frugal enough that diesel's bragging rights just don't matter. Cost of diesel engine production. You'd think diesel motorcycles would be everywhere. Better fuel economy, more torque, and longer engine life. So why are they so rare? One massive roadblock is the sheer cost of producing diesel engines compared to gasoline ones. Diesel engines are built to withstand extreme internal pressures, with compression ratios often double those of gasoline engines. That means they need reinforced blocks, hardened pistons, and beefier crankshafts just to survive the punishment of combustion. These heavy-duty components don't come cheap, and when you scale them down for a motorcycle, the price per unit skyrockets. Even a modest diesel engine designed for a bike can cost thousands more than an equivalent gasoline motor, making it a tough sell for manufacturers and riders alike. But the expense doesn't stop at raw materials. Precision engineering drives costs even higher. Diesel engines rely on ultra-high-pressure fuel injection systems, some operating at over 30,000 psi, to properly atomize fuel. These systems demand expensive components like piezoelectric injectors and precision-machined pumps, all built to microscopic tolerances. A single flaw can lead to catastrophic failure, meaning stricter quality control and higher production costs. Then there's the added complexity of turbocharging, which most modern diesels use to maximize efficiency, and emissions equipment like particulate filters and selective catalytic reduction systems. All of this turns what could be a simple, rugged engine into a pricey piece of tech. For perspective, industrial diesel engines in the 50-250 horsepower range can cost anywhere from $15,000 to $40,000. Now, imagine shrinking that down for a motorcycle while keeping it affordable. It's no wonder most manufacturers don't even bother. And that brings us to the final nail in the coffin: economies of scale. Gasoline engines dominate the motorcycle market, allowing manufacturers to benefit from mass production, streamlined supply chains, and decades of refinement. Diesel bikes, on the other hand, are a niche within a niche. A few companies, like Royal Enfield with its military-spec diesel Bullet or Hayes Diversified Technologies with its diesel-powered KLR 650, have tried, but low demand keeps production volumes tiny and prices high. Even boutique builders like Axiom Diesel and Neander Motors, which focus on premium diesel cruisers, struggle to make the numbers work. Without a breakthrough in cost-effective diesel engine design, something lighter, simpler, and cheaper to produce, gasoline will continue to rule the two-wheeled world. It's not that diesel doesn't have advantages. It's just that for now, those advantages come at a price most riders aren't willing to pay. So, while the idea of a torquey, fuel-sipping diesel motorcycle is undeniably cool, the reality is that building one at a competitive price is an uphill battle. Until someone figures out how to make diesel engines as cheap and compact as gasoline ones, they'll remain a rare sight on the road, more of a curiosity than a mainstream option. And that's a shame, because a world with more diesel bikes would be a world with fewer stops at the gas station and more low-end grunt for tearing up the asphalt. But for now, we're stuck with the status quo. Gasoline reigns supreme and diesel motorcycles remain the stuff of gearhead fantasies. Emissions and environmental regulations. Why aren't there diesel motorcycles? Emissions and environmental regulations. You'd think diesel motorcycles would be everywhere. Cheaper fuel, better mileage, and that sweet torque. But here's the dirty truth. Emissions regulations have basically killed them before they even got started. Diesel engines, while efficient, spew out way more nitrogen oxides, NOx, and particulate matter than gasoline engines. And as governments worldwide crack down on air pollution, meeting modern standards has become a nightmare for small two-wheelers. Unlike cars and trucks, which can handle bulky after-treatment systems like diesel particulate filters, DPF, and selective catalytic reduction, SCR, motorcycles simply don't have the space or weight tolerance for all that extra hardware. Throw in the skyrocketing costs of compliance, and manufacturers just aren't willing to gamble on a niche product that might get banned in a few years anyway. The problem isn't just technical, it's political. Places like California and the EU have led the charge with ultra-strict emissions tiers. Tier 4 for non-road engines, Bharat Stage 6 in India, forcing diesel engines to clean up or die. But while big rigs and farm equipment can absorb the cost of advanced emissions tech, motorcycles can't. Even if a company somehow squeezed a DPF into a bike, the added weight and complexity would ruin the riding experience, making it sluggish and expensive. Two things riders hate. And let's be real, regulators aren't losing sleep over diesel bikes because compared to the millions of cars and trucks on the road, motorcycles are a drop in the pollution bucket. So, unless there's a massive breakthrough in compact emissions tech, diesel bikes will stay a quirky footnote in history. But here's the irony. While diesel bikes get sidelined, gasoline motorcycles aren't exactly eco-heroes either. Studies show they often emit more smog-forming pollutants per mile than cars, thanks to lax regulations and riders yanking out catalytic converters for better performance. Yet unlike diesel, gas bikes slip through loopholes because they're small and, let's face it, governments care more about cleaning up the vehicles that clog highways daily. So, unless electric bikes take over completely, and they're trying, the dream of a diesel-powered motorcycle revolution is pretty much dead on arrival. Blame the regulators, blame the physics, or just blame the fact that nobody wants to ride something that sounds like a tractor and costs as much as a Tesla. Noise levels. Imagine cruising down the highway on a motorcycle, the wind in your face, and then bam, the deafening roar of a diesel engine drowns out everything else. That's one big reason diesel bikes aren't common. They're loud. Diesel engines operate at higher compression ratios than gasoline engines, which means more forceful combustion and, in turn, more noise. While some riders love the thunder of a big V-twin, the constant clatter of a diesel is a whole different beast. One that's not exactly music to most people's ears, especially in urban areas where noise regulations are strict. Street bikes are designed for agility and comfort, and excessive noise works against both. Gasoline engines can be tuned to purr or growl, but diesel's signature rattle is harder to muffle without heavy soundproofing, which adds weight and kills the lightweight appeal of motorcycles. Even modern diesels in cars have advanced noise reduction tech, but squeezing all that into a bike's compact frame? Tough sell. And let's be honest, while a loud exhaust might turn heads at a bike meet, daily riders don't want to feel like they're piloting a tractor every time they hit the throttle. Then there's the social factor. Motorcycles already battle noise complaints, and diesel engines would only make it worse. Cities worldwide are cracking down on excessive vehicle noise, and a diesel bike would likely land on the wrong side of those laws. Even if you love the raw mechanical sound, the reality is that most riders and their neighbors prefer the smoother, more controlled acoustics of gasoline engines. So while diesel might have its perks, the racket it brings is a deal breaker for two-wheeled machines built for speed, style, and a little bit of subtlety. Limited market demand. Let's be honest. When you think of a motorcycle, you picture the roar of a gasoline engine, not the clatter of a diesel. And you're not alone. The reality is most riders just don't want diesel bikes. And that lack of demand is a huge reason why they've never taken off. Gasoline motorcycles dominate the market because they deliver what riders crave: sharp throttle response, high revving excitement, and that visceral riding experience diesel engines struggle to match. Diesel's fuel efficiency and torque sound great on paper, but when it comes to the thrill of riding, gasoline bikes win every time. Manufacturers follow the money, and with no real push from consumers for diesel alternatives, they've focused their efforts elsewhere, like electric bikes, which are now stealing the spotlight. Even when diesel motorcycles have hit the market, they've mostly flopped. Take the Royal Enfield Taurus, a diesel-powered bullet with legendary fuel economy, but a gutless 6.5 horsepower. So slow, it felt like riding a tractor. Or the Track T 800 CDI, a Dutch adventure bike that reviewers called bizarre and crude, with a monotonous drone and sluggish acceleration. These bikes appealed to a tiny niche, like military users or hypermiling enthusiasts, but for the average rider, they were just too underwhelming. Without a broad customer base, companies had no incentive to invest in refining diesel tech for motorcycles, especially when gasoline engines kept getting lighter, faster, and more efficient. The final nail in the coffin? The rise of electric motorcycles. While diesel bikes could have been a bridge between gasoline and electric, the industry skipped right over them. Riders today are more interested in cutting-edge tech and sustainability, things diesel, with its soot and noise, can't deliver. Even the few diesel fans out there are now turning to hybrids or full electric options. So unless there's a sudden surge of demand for diesel's niche benefits, like ultra-long range or multi-fuel capability, it's unlikely we'll ever see them go mainstream. The market has spoken, and it's all about gasoline. And now, electricity. Success stories. Rare diesel bikes. Believe it or not, diesel motorcycles have had their moments in the spotlight, just not in the way you'd expect. Take Royal Enfield's Taurus, aka the Bullet Diesel, which became a cult classic in India during the 90s. This quirky bike swapped the usual petrol engine for a 325cc diesel unit, churning out a laughable 6.5 horsepower, but achieving a jaw-dropping 200 mpg. Designed for endurance over speed, it was a hit with budget-conscious riders and farmers, though its earth-shaking vibrations and clouds of black smoke eventually led to its demise under tightening emissions laws. The Taurus proved diesel bikes could be wildly efficient, just not exactly thrilling. Then there's the Hayes M1030 M1, a military-grade beast born from a Kawasaki KLR 650 but rebuilt to run on jet fuel. Developed for the U.S. Marine Corps, this diesel-powered workhorse could guzzle JP8, diesel, or even biodiesel, making it a logistics dream for the battlefield. With 28 horsepower and a 400-mile range, it was rugged, reliable, and almost civilian-ready, until Hayes shelved the civilian version due to military demand. A handful of these bikes even smashed records at Bonneville, hitting 121 mph and scoring 162 mpg in fuel challenges. Talk about a diesel underdog. But perhaps the most fascinating diesel bike isn't a factory model at all. It's a resto-modded 1959 Royal Enfield. fitted with a Greaves Lombardini agricultural diesel engine. Custom shop time cycles transformed this vintage bullet into a 75 kmpl 180 mpg bobber, blending retro style with absurd efficiency. Sure, it topped out at tractor-like speeds, but as a rolling piece of art and a middle finger to fuel costs, it's a reminder that diesel bikes can be cool. These rare successes show diesel's potential, but they also highlight why it never went mainstream. Speed-loving riders and emissions regulations just weren't on their side. Hybrid and electric competition. While diesel engines offer impressive fuel efficiency, their heavier weight and slower acceleration make them less suitable for the nimble performance expected from motorcycles. Moreover, the rise of electric motorcycles has shifted the industry's focus. Electric motorcycles provide instant torque, smoother rides, and lower maintenance, aligning with modern riders' preferences. As battery technology advances and charging infrastructure expands, electric bikes are becoming more practical and appealing. Manufacturers are investing heavily in electric models to meet environmental regulations and consumer demand. In contrast, diesel engines face challenges like higher emissions and stricter regulations. The complexity and cost of diesel technology, combined with the industry's pivot towards electrification, make diesel motorcycles less viable in today's market. As a result, electric motorcycles are leading the way in alternative fuel options for two-wheelers. Future possibilities? Diesel motorcycles might seem like a relic of the past, but what if cutting-edge tech could revive them? Advanced diesel engines are getting lighter, cleaner, and more efficient. Imagine a turbocharged three-cylinder diesel bike with hybrid assist, slashing weight while delivering monster torque and 100+ mpg. Startups like Axiom Diesel Cycles have teased high-end cruisers with industrial diesel engines. And military bikes like the HDT M1030 M1 prove diesel's rugged potential. With tighter emission standards pushing innovation, new combustion tech or even hydrogen diesel hybrids could make these bikes viable, especially for long-haul touring where electric bikes still struggle with range. Biofuels and synthetic diesel could be game changers too. Companies like Yamaha are already exploring bioethanol blends for cleaner combustion, and synthetic fuels, made from renewable sources, could let diesel bikes run carbon neutral without sacrificing their fuel-sipping superpower. Imagine filling up with algae-based diesel or recycled biofuel, turning every ride into an eco-statement. Military and adventure riders already swear by diesel's multi-fuel flexibility: JP8, kerosene, biodiesel. And if civilian tech follows, diesel bikes could become the ultimate off-grid explorers. The Royal Enfield Taurus once proved diesel's frugal appeal. Modern versions with biofuel compatibility might just win over eco-conscious riders. The real hurdle? Perception. Diesel's clattery tractor reputation clashes with motorcycle culture's love for rev-happy gasoline engines. But what if the next-gen diesel bike combined silent combustion tech, instant electric torque, and a sleek design? Picture a Neander 1400-style turbo diesel with 115 HP and Aprilia-level aerodynamics. Suddenly, diesel's not just practical, it's cool. The niche is tiny now, but as electrification dominates, diesel hybrids or synthetic fuel bikes could carve out a rebel niche, the long-range, low-maintenance alternative for riders who refuse to plug in. The future of diesel bikes isn't dead. It's just waiting for the right tech to hit the throttle. What do you think? Would you ride one? Drop a comment, hit like, and subscribe for more deep dives like this.